Hey guys, it's Zach here, and today I'm going to be turning this empty tank into a planted jungle. The first thing I had to do with this tank was just try and wipe away all of the dried duckweed that was on the glass, and I just used a sponge for that. And then I also removed the water and the plants and got the tank to a fairly clean state. With the tank fairly clean, I added in the substrate. To start, I added in these substrate bags, which hold all of the topsoil, and it's just going to stop it from mixing into the layers of sand that I'm going to add. When adding in the sand, I'm trying to leave about an inch above the substrate bags, and I'm also trying to slope it up towards the back of the tank. With the substrate in, I can move on to hardscape for this tank, and for this tank I want to focus on a larger, more impactful hardscape, so I'm going to be starting with this larger piece of wood. Now obviously this large piece of wood is going to float, so I'm going to try and add in a couple of larger rocks with it, just to secure it down and keep it from floating up once I fill up the tank. In order to secure this piece of wood to the rock, I'm going to be using a silicone instead of super glue. This is just because it is a bit of a larger project, and it would take a lot of super glue to get the same result that this small amount of silicone will achieve. With this silicone and rock attached, I do just want to let this silicone cure before I do move on, so I'm going to give it 24 hours and then I will embellish the rest of the scape. 24 hours later, and I've just added in the extra stones, which make the scape look very good, and I don't need to attach these stones either because the big stone in the middle is going to be more than enough to weigh down this piece of wood. With all of the hardscape and substrate in, I was able to fill up the tank and move on to planting. My goal for planting in this tank was to mix a bunch of different textures of plants and get a really nice and cohesive looking tank going. So I added a whole bunch of different kinds of plants of all different shapes and sizes in order to get a lot of different textures that would break up the tank and really give it a jungle feel. After finishing planting in the water, I also added in a couple of plants above the rim, and planting for this tank was complete and it looked very good. A week later and the tank is still looking very good. It does have this cloudiness to it, however I believe that this is just a bacterial bloom. This is completely normal and I just need to wait for this tank to finish cycling. 2 months later, and I bet that this is not what you thought the tank would look like. The tank was looking good for the first couple of weeks, and then all of a sudden the plants all melted away and the tannins started to build in the tank. Before it got to this point, I did a whole bunch of water changes to try and get it back to this nice pristine state that it was in. However, nothing I did seemed to fix it. On the bright side, at least the snails have had time to populate, and now they are covering this log, which is great to see, so I figure I owe them, and I should fix up this tank. The first thing I want to do is drain the water so I can work inside the tank. The first thing I wanted to do in the tank to restore it was add in as much plant mass as I could, and I thought the best way to do this would be to add in a whole bunch of moss. By a whole bunch of moss, I mean enough that I practically covered the log in this tank with moss. Once all the moss was attached, I filled the tank back up so I could add in the other plants. In the foreground, I added in some more dwarf sage. I just found this did the best in this tank, and for the background, I added in some more Henthenanthera zosterfolia. The next day, and this tank is looking far better than it has in the past few months. I am super excited to see how this tank develops and how it grows. That is everything for this video. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed. If you have, please consider subscribing, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.